Good morning, everyone. This is Rhonda Burkert with HCC, and today we have some special guests with us to introduce and educate, or maybe re-educate and give you some additional details on Bonefish software. We have Brandon Chesmar and Taylor Adrian, and I'll pass it over to you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having us. We're super excited. Wanted to just kind of first start by going over what we'll be discussing from a high level on this first slide here. Hopefully you guys can all see my screen. It says continuous monitoring, mitigate AP and payroll risks while staying compliant. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll be presenting on a best practice fiscal control software, continuous monitoring. It's a tool that's going to help fiscal teams reduce ongoing risks while ensuring effective compliance. So it's going to primarily give you guys three things within the finance department. Number one is a proactive approach to risk management. Number two, risk-informed decision capability. And then third is increased compliance validations, all at a reduced workload. My name is Taylor Adrian. I've been a part of Bonefish Systems for the past 2+ years, leading the business development and sales. And in the next 25 or hour or so, I believe we have, correct?
Yes.
I'll be guiding you guys through this best practice financial insights designed to help empower you guys and your finance teams. Also on the call is Brandon Chesmar. He's our senior marketing and relations manager. He'll be available. I'm more on the generalist side. He's more of a specialist. So if there's any questions, throughout, he'll be available to help answer questions as well as myself, of course. So we'll be taking you through. And to begin, just give you a little bit of background on Bonefish Systems. We are based in Northeast Ohio in the city of Amherst. It's in Lorain County, about 30 minutes west of downtown Cleveland. We are a technology company and we specialize in simplifying regulatory compliance validations, detecting potential fraud, as well as ensuring data integrity within accounting packages through our web-based software that we're discussing here today. Our technology is especially advantageous for smaller fiscal teams working at smaller school districts all throughout Ohio. We're enabling you guys to handle equivalent legal responsibilities to the larger organizations, but who have a little bit fewer resources to leverage. So taking a look at our customer map here, we have a focus on government and educational sectors. This illustrates our extensive presence all throughout Ohio. And we are benchmark program partners of OASBO. And through that partnership over the last decade plus, we've built a network spanning 3/4 of the state's counties with over 330 plus Ohio schools, including ESCs and career centers as current customers of ours today. On this next page here, this is telling you a little bit more about our flagship product. It's the Complete Accounts Payable Monitoring Solution. It was formerly known as the Electronic Vendor and Payroll Auditing System. It was actually voted Best Technology Solution at the 17th Annual All In for Tech Day here in Cleveland in November of 2023. It is a payment and payroll risk analysis software. Again, it's web-based, it's very easy to use, and it integrates really well with your existing accounting system state software and redesign. We have different algorithms that will analyze your accounting package data in the background of your operation to produce different rules and reports, and it'll help simplify regulatory compliance requirements based on different ORCs and executive orders that are placed upon you guys to try to keep up with. So the focus of it is really all about efficiency and effectiveness to help ensure you guys have the best protection and essential insights while you're approving your district funds and ultimately help protect yourself, your reputation, as well as taxpayer dollars. So again, over 330 plus CFOs working in the educational sector all throughout Ohio trust this tool for airtight fiscal control, helping make their jobs a little bit easier and a little more worry-free as well. On this next slide, we'll be introducing here 3 different pillars of our continuous monitoring solution. Each of them are pretty vital for ensuring your financial security. So at the core of it, what is our system actually looking for, right? The way it works is your payment and your payroll files, they're loaded into our continuous monitoring software via web service calls or just at a click of a button, which I'll get into here shortly. And ultimately, it's going to help you identify different areas of potential risk within your payments and payroll. So such as manual errors, different compliance requirements, as I mentioned, and then even potentially fraudulent activity as well. So these are items that are, when you are looking at your check register in front of you, for example, on the AP side of things, you're not necessarily going to be able to see a lot of these things that this monitoring solution will bring to light for you on just at a really at a click of a button, essentially. So it's going to be looking for gaps and changes in your historical data set over the past 10 plus years or whatever amount of history we can pull in for you guys. And within your data, we're going to be looking for different areas in regards to these risks. So firstly, fraud prevention and detection. As you guys know, fraud poses a big risk that's ongoing, can be a lot closer to affecting your organization than you might realize. Our monitoring solution, it again directly integrates with your AP and payroll systems. It's going to analyze every payment 100% that's flowing through your accounting package, regardless of dollar amount. And we actually receive Google alerts in regards to fraud throughout Ohio every single week. So it is something that's ongoing, and you want to make sure you have some additional layers of protection that are cost effective, easy to use, and just making sure things aren't slipping through the cracks. Secondly is manual error identification. This pillar is going to focus on identifying common areas of error that can disrupt your guys' financial processes. So it'll target different issues that we see most common, such as duplicate invoices or maybe duplicate vendor creations. Of course, maintaining a clean vendor database is really essential for financial health. And without these types of tools in place, managing those errors with how busy you guys all are, it can become a little bit overwhelming, or can kind of fall on the back burner at times, as each month presents different tasks you guys are trying to navigate through each and every day. So human errors, of course, are inevitable, right? Being only human, mistakes can and do happen, whether we realize it or not. And with thousands of vendors to try to keep up with, it can be a little bit daunting of a task to try to keep up with. So our software is going to help catch things like duplicate vendors, duplicate payments, ensuring some clean data for you guys, and
Right,
preventing
Kenya.
different financial discrepancies. Go ahead. Oh, can you hear me? Oh, all right. I just
Hey,
heard
Sophie,
someone
you have a
chime in.
question? Okay. She muted herself
Okay.
again.
All right, no worries. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. And then lastly is the regulatory compliance piece, a big portion of our system, and why so many schools and career centers, ESCs throughout Ohio, rely on our monitoring solution. It helps ease this process a little bit. We're going to automate a lot of the state and federal compliance requirements, validating against different debarred vendor lists, helping to avoid different engagements from high-risk entities that are out there. So just because they weren't, one of your vendors weren't on a bad guy list yesterday doesn't mean over the weekend, they didn't get into some trouble or do something they weren't supposed to and end up on one of these lists, right? So even if your vendor base stays relatively the same, the risks are always there, as each day can present different challenges. So it's going to streamline these regulatory compliance checks for you guys. We're going to monitor these types of risks. And again, with how busy you guys are, it's one of the main problems we hear about all the time from fiscal leaders all throughout Ohio. And they tell us they need this because there's a main challenge that you guys have, which is just juggling different board policies, compliance, as we talked about, audits coming and going, with all the federal funds flowing. Of course, audits will always follow the money trail, right? And then different legal obligations you guys have, on top of just the limited time and limited staff, to try to keep up with everything on your guys' plate to make sure everything is vetted as thoroughly and diligently as it needs to be when the auditors come in and ask for proof of validations on some of these requirements. So requires a lot of effort, and why not rely on some technology like you do in your day-to-day life, right? We live in the app world. You click a button, you expect it to work, you plug it in, it works, right? It's the same thing in the technology space on the financial tool side. So sometimes it can be a little bit just kind of intimidating, to try to introduce new technology into the workplace because you've always done it a certain way, maybe, right? And it's gotten to you this point unscathed, right? But again, everyone, being human, mistakes can and do happen. And it's not even just mistakes, it's just, these bad actors as well from the fraud side are getting smarter and smarter. They're leaning into technology. So, it's kind of the whole saying, fight fire with fire, right? If they're using technology and AI and everything else to try to get in and take advantage of who holds the keys to the funds, right? It's the finance department, and it's millions and millions of public funds. So you guys might as well have some technology as well, to fight what they're fighting with as well. And so going into this slide, this is just highlighting for you continuous monitoring. It's going to allow you to detect compliance and risk issues within your financial environment. It's going to allow you to identify the type of controls you do have in place, making sure you're assessing the effectiveness of it right. It's one thing to have the controls, but as time goes on, you get busy. If you're not continually assessing the effectiveness of it, things can happen when you're least expecting. So our program's going to improve the audit visibility for you and the compliance. And then last but not least, it's going to help demonstrate a segregation of duty as well with our time stamping. So as you work within the system, it's going to easily show and prove to the auditors who did what within your office to define and prove those segregations of duties, which we'll get into here shortly. So now we'll kind of get into bringing this to life for you, right? That was kind of more high level. Now we'll kind of get into the system itself. Again, here is the homepage of the program. The system was created to protect district funds, and the way it works today, because you guys have state software, is we integrate directly into your accounting package. And what that means is we automatically pull in your payment and payroll files into our system. So this is your homepage, and from here you're going to have different alerts and messages letting you know any area of potential high risk or compliance that's needed within your payments. So for example, manual error, compliance, potential fraudulent activity. Of course, we'll dive into what each of those mean. However, an example on the payment side, paying a vendor, have a duplicate vendor, we'll notify you of that. Payroll side example, if we have an employee with an expired credential from the Ohio Department of Education, right, we'll notify you of that as well. And of course, we'll show you how that works here as we go along. So the two main roles within the system is number one, the uploader on the payment side, and number two, the reviewer on the payment side. The uploader is typically the person who's going to run or cut the checks, which would typically be AP, and their job would be either to log into this homepage, hit this get checks button right here, and then when those checks are ready, they will pull in and let you know via email automatically when the file is ready for the review in the work queue view right in the center of the screen. So basically you'll log in, click this get checks button, log out, that person's job will be done, and then the person who's going to review and approve the file, most often the CFO or treasurer, would get an email and begin their review and approval process within our monitoring solution here. So, if the uploader's job, if you guys are in state software, it's just log in, click that button. The reviewer's job is going to be to see that the file is ready for review. You'll see that right in the middle. And on the far right, there's this view analysis button under the action column in blue. You'll just click that button to begin your review of the payments. And what you'll see here on this next page is the risk rating versus check amount chart. This is going to be where it's going to show you, a lot of times you might think the higher dollar is the riskier dollar amount, but usually it's the smaller payments that are riskier because those aren't vetted as thoroughly as those bigger payments, right? And usually the fraud cases that we examine, they last anywhere from 12 to 18 months on average, and it's usually these smaller payments, so they're not as vetted as thoroughly, that fall under the radar. So we're going to actually put your order in, or your review, excuse me, in order from highest risk to lowest risk based on these different anomalies and case studies and best practices we see in the fraud space. So the total checks and the total dollar amount in the middle of the screen, and then below that is your review complete and review pending buttons, which will come into play in a little bit. And then at the bottom of the screen here, you see every vendor that are all your checks sorted from highest risk to lowest risk. So we always want to start our review as CFO or treasurer at the very top by clicking this check number to the right of the name of the vendor. So you see the risk rating score. Williams Builders is who we're paying out to, and to the right, you'll just click that check number, and this will take us into a page here. Generally speaking, when a CFO has a check register in front of them, you guys will be able to see, these few items of detail. So the check amount, the name, the vendor number, the check date. But what you're getting is the check itemized list with the PO number, the invoice number, the account code, as well as the description. And then below that are these different analysis messages that trigger below. So some will require action, which you'll see under the resource column in blue, and others are just more informational, nice to know, and it does, contribute towards their overall risk profile, which every analysis message has an analysis factor number tied to it on the far right. It's a combination. If you add up these analysis factor numbers that give you the high or low risk rating that we saw on the page before, or you can see right up top here as well, a risk rating of 28 in this case. So the first message we see here is in relation to compliance. We'll come right back to this screen and show you how we make your life easy keeping up with these regulatory compliance. First, want to break down these different payment thresholds that you're required by law to keep up with. So our system is going to give you some proactive alerts as you approach these federal or state compliance thresholds, and it's going to ensure compliance for you guys with these different ORCs and executive orders that are laid out here in the red text. So there's going to be these different certified state and federal databases that you're required to go out to each and every time one of these three thresholds are met. So anytime you're paying with federal funds, you're required to go out and confirm and validate the results that generated. And then you're also required when 25,000 for a single PO or a contract is met, or also cumulative spend $50,000 or more in the entire fiscal year for one single vendor. So can be a little bit tricky and just time consuming in more of a manual sense without a program like this in place, because you'd have to identify when each of these thresholds are met. You'd have to know which website to go out and validate, and then you'd have to, of course, print, file out, and store, and be ready to prove that when the auditor comes in and asks for proof of those validations. So can take a lot of time. Of course, it's possible, but a lot of times we do see it does, kind of take a back seat in regards to everything else you already are tasked with keeping up with. So these are the laws spelt out in a different way. We did share a handout with Rhonda that she can distribute to you guys after this call, or maybe she already did. But some of those laws here are just laid out with exactly what those ORCs and executive orders are saying. So essentially, it's these various state and government entities. They come up with these lists of people and businesses you guys can't do business with. There's all different kinds of laws around it, and again, these requirements are imposed upon you guys to keep up with at all times. So it's nearly impossible to keep up with without an automated system like this in place. And of course, on top of making sure your payments are done in accordance with law, the last thing as well is it's twofold. You want to make sure you're also not doing business with an entity that is appearing on one of these lists at any point in time, right? So the system is always validating these certified external databases. It's always making sure your vendors are never appearing on any of these bad guy lists. So if they ever are, you're notified. Even if one of these payment thresholds weren't met, we'll still, of course, notify you if they ever do show up on one of those bad guy lists. So we're going back to our example here where you're paying out to Williams Builders. You can see on the top line that ORC 924 threshold was met. So fiscal year expenditures have reached $25,000 for a single PO. External searches have not yet been completed, so you're required to perform an external search to validate that. So we alert you to it, and then under the resource column in blue, we take it a step further. You can click the compliance search button, where you'll receive a pop-up window that pulls in the results from all of those databases, the Auditor State Findings to Recovery, SAM.gov Excluded Parties List System Search, the Ohio Secretary of State debarred contractors, as well as we do include the Ohio Business Filing Search if you're paying to an Ohio-based company and you want to just make sure that it's not a potential shell company, right? If you're receiving goods and services and you've been working with it for a long time, you're probably good, but it's still worth to note and to ask the question if it was coming back as not an active filing status. If it showed this dead or canceled status with the state, you might want to reach out to to the vendor and just confirm, especially if it's a brand new vendor, right, that you're paying for the first time. This gives you an extra layer of checks and balance. It is based on a loose search result, so there is a quick manual review you have to do, but it's with good intent that you're able to, put your comments in up here at the top and confirm that Williams Builders is not showing up on these regulatory bad guy lists. You put your comments in. For example, what we see common is reviewed, validated, no exact matches found, and you just click this complete compliance search button and your job is done. And on the back end, so one of the coolest features of the system is on the back end, you get access to this vendor audit report that automatically digitally stores all of your required searches for the last 2 fiscal years, the previous one and the current one, and you can search by vendor name, and you can easily prove to the auditors that on such and such date, when you did the required compliance, search on Williams Builders, so-and-so did the search within your office. These were the comments that were put in at the time of the search. And then on the far right, you have a review searches button in blue. You can click that button and you can see in the pop-up here just a snapshot of what that would look like, but it would show for the name of that vendor, the date, and all the results that came back, so you could easily prove compliance evidence for the auditor. This is at no extra work on your part. You don't have to mess around with a printer that's out of ink, for example, or figure out, which filing cabinet to go sift through, when looking to prove this type of validation. So that's an easy way to complete it during your review. But we also have this cool area where it's a catch-all report on the home page. You can actually just click I'll go back a few slides here. I'll show you. You just click this button on the home page. Right here, I was a little further than I thought, but right here it says this validate button. It tells you how many required compliance checks are required. In this case, there's 83. Usually it'd be a lot lower than that, but the idea here is to keep that at 0. If you click that validate button, and I can't really skip ahead, so I'll just have to skip ahead here. If you click that validate button, you're going to be able to have this catch-all compliance report right here. It'll take you into it for all your vendors that have met one of those 3 compliance thresholds. So if a PO or contract did reach or exceed 25K, if payments were made with federal funds, or if fiscal year expenditures have reached or exceeded $50,000 cumulatively in total for that specific vendor, you could actually just have someone within your office, tasked with keeping up and making sure this number was at 0, and then you'd be able to complete the search how we just did in the same way, and everything would be automatically stored on the vendor audit report for proof. That's the biggest thing, right? I've heard stories time and time again where CFOs or finance teams are doing these searches, but when push comes to shove, you guys aren't able to actually always prove that you did the search. So you got to be able to prove it as well as complete it. So a little bit of a cumbersome process and more of a manual world. This helps, kind of cut down on some redundancy and just, again, making sure all your payments are done in accordance with law. Moving on, we're going to get into some fraud trends that we are seeing. So payment fraud is on the rise in the United States. So the FTC reported 2 months ago that in 2023, fraud losses were over $10 billion. That's a 14% increase year over year. The top payment method for such losses was actually bank transfers or payments, and that amounted to $1.8 billion from the FTC report. So the Auditor of State, Keith Faber, they come out with a bulletin, as you know. They came out with one again in April, and basically just highlighted how unsuspecting Ohio public offices, you guys might think you're dealing with a known vendor or an employee, to process the request and change bank account information without following, the guidance in the Auditor State's bulletin, which is telling you guys that you guys should independently be going out and verifying the legitimacy of the request or the identity of that requester. Sometimes, a lot of times, and we'll share some examples here shortly, but once the funds are transferred, they're often, very difficult to recoup, right? So one recent example actually involved theft of more than $700,000 from it was the Granville Recreation District in Licking County, Ohio. So in this real Ohio example it's called spear phishing. It's a payment redirect scheme, which is very, very popular right now. In this example, emails were received by the district from an email account slightly different than the original vendor email account, which contained the false payment instructions to the quote unquote vendor. So the district actually, unfortunately, followed the instructions and they went ahead and transferred the $713,000 fraudulent money to the fraudulent account without independently verifying the identity or the identity of that requester or the new bank account information. And again, once the money's gone, it's typically really hard to claw back. So Keith Faber, he's, of course, the auditor of state, he's again urging state and local government employees to be extra diligent in reviewing these types of requests to the redirect payments from public accounts, as online scammers, again, they're getting smarter and smarter, and they're continuing to go after and target public offices. So the redirect scheme is something to be very mindful of. They're the business email compromises. Usually, you feel like it might be an innocent message to your office, and it might look, rather convincing. But again, with advancing artificial intelligence, AI, technology, these cyber criminals, they can actually even take it a step further now. They can match voices, they can match appearances, all electronically. So finance teams, of course, and employees, that are processing these invoices, you guys are the most vulnerable to this type of payment and redirect requests. But of course, all employees, from top to bottom, you guys should all be aware of how these fraud schemes are occurring, as anyone can, essentially fall victim to a spear phishing attack, and it could further open up your organization to some further exploitation as well. So a lot of these schemes, they do occur via electronic communication. So for example, email, right? But it is important to note as well that these same schemes, they can be initiated via telephone or a physical paper request too as well. So what can you do about it? There's a lot of different things you can put into place. I'm sure you guys have many of them in place already. But just to kind of go over with you a couple that we've heard are best practices through talking to the auditor of state's offices is, number one, avoid, if you can, taking redirect requests by electronic means. So in-person communication, it's always going to be the best practice for verifying the identity and the contact information. Have the vendor come into the office in person, provide the redirect payment information. If it's a vendor where you don't personally know them yet, you should definitely have a second person from the department that deals with that vendor verify that identity and just confirm the change request. That's number one, but obviously not always possible, right? Dealing with vendors from hours away or states away, not always possible. So there's another way, definitely, if just the main thing here is using extreme caution, right? Just making sure that you guys are going through, confirming separate sources. So whether it is via telephone, if they're calling in to change it, maybe take a step back, think about it, tell them you'll contact them, and don't use the contact information from the change request. Instead, find a phone number from a validated source that you guys already have, such as a prior invoice maybe, or even a regularly updated employee or vendor contact information listing. So if you guys know their valid, company website, that's a good place just to validate, to make sure someone isn't posing as said vendor when in fact they're just a bad actor trying to create an urgent situation to take advantage. It's just something that keeps happening. So you guys could do a telephone call as well to validate the identity of the employee or the vendor contact. Always ask them questions that maybe they would only know based on different past experiences or conversations that only they would be privy to. So that's another little tactic you can utilize as well. Just loop in prior communication, and if your gut's telling you this isn't feeling right, it's definitely time to not rush the process. The bad actors are always trying to make it an urgent situation to make you act quickly and without much thought. So with how busy you guys are, sometimes manual protocols can be skipped, as we see in these different protocols. And so having monitoring in place is another area of checks and balance for you, which I'll show you on the next screen. And then employee vendor relationships as well is another big area of risk too, which we'll get into here shortly next as well. So on this next slide, going back to the system, Here you can see an example of that extra layer of checks and balance to make sure that your processes are always followed. So as CFO or treasurer, you have this extra layer of insight that you can see for such and such person, whether that's on the payroll side or vendor side. It would look very similar. Here you would see the bank account information has changed, or the employee name has changed, or the vendor name changed, etc. And then we give you pop-up windows as well here under the resource column. If it's changing a lot or very often, that's of course a red flag you want to be aware of. And having continuous monitoring in place is going to give you guys a platform to make sure you don't have surprises take place, and so you can ask the appropriate questions. If you guys don't have the information at your fingertips, if you didn't know the bank information was changed, and it was changed without you getting that paperwork or without the vendor stopping in person, for example, you want to make sure you have that extra layer of checks and balance, because we see it happen far too often where a process wasn't followed. It was protocol, but it wasn't followed. The CFO or treasurer was maybe out on vacation, on a cruise or something like that, and a support staff member, pushed it through, and they figured they would, catch up with the paperwork the next week. But at that point, the payments could have already gone out, and it's too late. So you can access this with remote access. Anywhere you have internet connection, you can log in, take a look at these types of things that you want to be aware of. On the next page here, just kind of going back to more of some vendor examples, you were paying out to Williams Builders. You would just click the next button, and you're able to just quickly go through these different areas of potential risk. So this next one, I mentioned the potential relationships or potential conflicts of interest or kickback schemes that could be going on, or shell companies, right? So in this example, you can see here you're paying out to Scott Mitchell Landscaping. Again, with a good old-fashioned check register, you're really only taking a look at the name, the number, the date, right? You're not getting a whole lot of context. With monitoring, you get the analysis below that, hey, this is a quick reminder, it's a new vendor being paid for the first time, no action needed, but another nice to know. And then down beneath that, you see, hey, the employee address actually matches a 1099 vendor a vendor and
We lost.
employee. Oh,
Okay.
yep, go ahead.
Yeah, we just lost your audio for a couple seconds. So just go
Oh,
back about 10 seconds on
okay, yeah, yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. Did you,
yeah.
was I still on this slide?
Yeah, you were just,
Okay,
it was like right after you said it's a vendor being paid for the first time, and then you started
okay,
saying the
thank
next
you.
line. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yep. Okay. Sorry about that. So this next line here is where you could have a potential relationship that you want to be aware of. Make sure they fit within your board policies, right? And there's no surprises. So this one says an employee address matches a 1099 vendor address. Under the resource column in blue, you can just click that pop-up window again. On the same page, it will show you here that the employee address of 2015 Julia Ave actually matches with an employee 2015 Julia Ave. So it's not necessarily saying fraud is taking place here, right? But we just want to make sure, again, you're able to be aware of the information. Did you know about the potential match? We'll match on potential matching tax IDs, addresses, phone numbers, name matches, and just make sure that we alert you during your review. But we'll also put all of the relationships you do have in a live report that you can print out, bring to your next finance meeting, and just make sure you and your staff are all on the same page at all times, including your board members, that you guys are paying attention to these potential types of risks. Moving on to the next slide here. So this is just highlighting more on the payroll side of things, but it's a big area of risk that we see slip through the cracks a lot of times. It's in regards to credential alerts and licensure. So you might be reviewing the payroll side and your employees. You can see you're paying out to up top, the amount, the check date, etc. And we see it all the time where maybe special education aides, they had an expired license, or it was a coach and it just slipped through the cracks. So you want to make sure it's not resulting in any sort of findings for recovery, or having the auditor pointed out to you months down the road, right? You want to be able to catch these things prior to those payments going out, or at least shortly thereafter, so you can kind of keep up with these types of things. So in the second area, second message below, it says you are paying an employee with active position code 505. They do not have an issued credential on file. So as you click the credential and position info button, Next to that, you'd be able to see a pop-up window here, again, that links with their Ohio Educator State ID. Up on the top left, you can see that it is a 505, they're an aide, their job status is active, and you can see below that they're expired. So you wanna make sure that that's not slipping through the cracks. And then we take it a step further. We give you these live reports that link directly to ODE's website, and we pull in potential expiring credentials for the new fiscal year. So this will list all your employees that have expiring credentials come the new fiscal year, and you can actually blanket send an email out to them on the top left and just click out and send them an email notifying them that records indicate they need to go ahead and update that information. And then as they update it, the cool thing is there's no manual tracking of this. This list will just grow smaller and smaller and smaller each month heading into each new fiscal year. And you could give access to this system or to this report, to whoever you'd like, whether it's your superintendent or whoever is tasked with keeping up with that within your organization. Everyone handles it a little bit differently. So we give you reports for that, as well as expired credentials and missing credentials report as well. But they all look very similar to what you see on the screen here. Moving on to the next slide here. Is our payroll variance formula. So as you click the next button, you're reviewing the next employee that you're improving payroll for. On the bottom left, you see in the analysis message below, the employee has received a check with a net pay over $5,000, a little bit of an anomaly, so we just make sure you're aware of it. And then beneath that, it says detected a significant variation from past gross payments in the red highlighted box that we put in there so you guys can follow along. So you click the payment history button under the resource column. You get a pop-up window that shows typically this employee was making anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 usually, or even $5,000. But in this case, they're about to be paid $9,750. So again, just making sure there's no surprises. We'll do a tiered result. So if this happens again on the next run, we might put it at a lower risk factor, and then eventually, if you've ignored it a few times, we might totally remove that so you're not bombarded with different messages that you're already aware of. But we just want to make sure to limit those risks for you, as we do see and hear about it happen where fiscal teams accidentally or unknowingly pay or overpay an employee. For example, that's no longer on payroll, or it wasn't supposed to be a supplemental. We've heard of, clicking an extra digit and they maybe get a few extra $100 on a paycheck for months on end until, again, it leads to a findings to recovery. So these types of things we want to avoid, and everything you see in the system came from direct feedback from Ohio school district CFOs that use the system. So we've just continued to evolve the system and add more and more in as we hear more and more feedback of what will make your guys a little bit easier and risk-free. So when you come back to the end of the file, whether you just reviewed your employees in risk rating order, or if you just got done reviewing your vendor base in that specific check run in risk rating order, you'll come back to where you started, and in the red box, you'll see that you're clicking the review complete button with your comments that are all timestamp stored and auditable. So you can easily go back at any point and show exactly who did the review, what comments were put in, and if there were any areas of concern, you could always put that in the review pending part. If you wanted to withhold a certain payment but move ahead with the rest of it, you guys could facilitate that. And then it's all email-based workflow, so you and your staff don't have to babysit the monitoring account. You'll get an email that says, hey, this file was approved, go ahead and cut those checks. So we're never going to stop or hold up payments, right? If you didn't get in and do the review until the week after the payments went out, it's not the end of the world. It's not a best practice, right? We prefer you're doing this review prior to the funds leaving your doorstep, but we understand that can't always happen just with things that happen week to week. But the good news is you're able to catch a lot of these potential areas of manual risk, non-compliance, and indicators of fraudulent activity within your payments or payroll that would be pretty hard to keep up with continually year over year, without a program in place like this. So pretty simple. On this next slide, it's just recapping what a process could look like for you. So if you're thinking you maybe want to move forward with a program like this, but you're not quite sure, where does this fit into your process? Again, everyone's process is a little different, right? But this slide, we're going to try to give you an idea of what it could look like for you with if you did want to add in continuous monitoring into your operation. So the top line here says checks are ready to print in the accounting package. Beneath that, it says payroll and payment file is loaded into the system. Number 3, an email notification file is ready for review. We'll email you that. And then number 4, you'd simply just log into Bonefish and click on the View Analysis button. You'd review each check on the screen in risk rating order. You would act on any checks that require it. And then you would ensure compliance is taken care of, and then just approve the entire check run with one click of a button. Again, that's all timestamp stored and auditable. And then your staff is email notified that the check run has been approved, and then checks from there can be cut and released to either your employees or vendors. So in a nutshell, that's how it could look for you guys. Everything would stay the same with your current processes. This is just something that runs in the background, is looking for any sort of anomalies or risk or required compliance, and just making sure you guys are able to keep up with it all at a few clicks of a button and prove that you guys are doing what you're required to do anyway, right? It's one thing to do what you're supposed to do. It's another thing to prove it. It's almost another part-time or full-time job to prove it. This helps you dot the I's and cross the T's. Getting into the next slide here is just some of the reports that come along with your continuous monitoring subscription within Bonefish. So we have 25 plus vendor payment and employee payroll reports on the vendor side of things. Some additional reports that we give you access to is a duplicate vendor report. We'll give you a full report that shows you all of your duplicates. We'll give you a report that's a big area of cleanup, which is your vendors not paid in 3+ years report. We believe you can actually just go ahead and export that, provide it to Rhonda and your ITC, and they can help you clean that up. Rhonda can correct me if I'm wrong there, but we understand that that's the case at times, at least. So big area of cleanup for data integrity. We do include a missing tax ID report. You can easily click on a pre-filled W-9 if need be and request that information from the vendor that's missing that information, just a click of a button. On the payroll side of things, we do handle your new hire reporting to the state on your behalf. We report it to ODJFS, new hire reporting for your new hires. And then the big one that usually slips through the cracks with districts that aren't using a program like that, like ours, is the 60-day gap in payment. So anytime there's a gap in pay of 60 days or more, you're required to report them again as a new hire. So think of coaches, right? They've been coaching for 10+ years. They're not a new hire, but wait, they went 60 days without being paid. Technically, you do have to report them again. Our system, you can toggle it on as an option, and we can automatically report that for you guys. We went over the credential reporting, and then we do have that employee vendor relationship report as well. So if you do have any relationships that are existing, you can easily identify that. Again, bring that to your next finance meeting or board meeting. Make sure you guys are on the same page with those potential conflicts. So some new system enhancements. I want to go over some of these as well. Again, we rolled these all out based on customer feedback, and we found out that it was advantageous and beneficial to the majority of our customer base. So when we find that that's true, we just automatically roll the updates out to our customers free of charge, and we just, we roll it out for you guys so you can start taking advantage of the added benefit. So the first one that we're going to review is the compliance vendor pre-check, right? We talked about how when vendors reach these certain payment thresholds, you're required to go out and validate they aren't on these quote unquote bad guy lists. But we also had multiple requests from districts that they wanted a way to do an upfront compliance validation prior to a contract and entering the vendor into their accounting package. So to do this, you would just go to the compliance tab, select the vendor pre-check, and enter in your vendor details and hit perform compliance search, and then you'd get the same results and just easily confirm that they weren't showing up on those lists, everything is auditable, and then you guys would be able to just move forward. And if you entered into contract, you could enter them into your accounting package and then move on about your day and just make sure that they're in a good spot moving forward. This next enhancement is again, just currently for anyone that's on this call, I know we have quite a few customers on the call today. So for you guys, we added in FBI BCI tracking. It's a new enhancement for all of our state software customers, and it's a drop-down menu on the homepage. It says FBI BCI. You just click into that, and you'll see a screen that looks similar to the one that you see right here. You would actually just provide these to Rhonda and have her and her team add in these two fields, the BCI date and the FBI date, to your accounting package. And then from there, you guys would be able to move forward with the FBI BCI tracking, which, as you guys know, expires every 5 years and can slip through the cracks from time to time. So we would give you a report where you could easily blanket send an email out, or you could click on in and out of any employee that you want to, and just give them a light notification that they need their credentials are expiring on such and such date, and we can help you guys keep up with that as well, not only within your review during your payroll runs that you guys are approving, but we also give you these reports so you guys can keep up with that in this way as well. And then we do give you an expired FBI BCI tracking report as well, so if there was anyone on those lists, you could easily have a catch-all report there as well. So a lot of information in a short amount of time. To recap, continuous monitoring is going to help you guys review 100% of your payments and payroll. It's going to prioritize your review based on various risks that are ever present and ongoing. And then it'll quickly identify any potential red flags for you guys. That would be, again, really tough to keep up with how busy you are, knowing these types of potential risks or compliance that's required. So tried my best to put a bow on it with the last 30 plus slides, and I think this pretty much encapsulates everything that I went over here. So what's it cost, right? We do aim to be very cost effective. Our standard pricing is anywhere from $5,300 to $5,900 annually on a 1, 3, or 5 year service agreement. However, again, as I mentioned, we are benchmark program partners of OASBO and Ohio Schools Council. So you guys, if you're members of one or both of those organizations, you would actually be able to take advantage of a pre-negotiated discounted rate for as low as $35.39 annually on a 5-year service agreement. You can get everything that you saw here today and then some, and any future enhancements that we roll out as a part of the monitoring solution. So pretty cost effective when you think it's literally going through, analyzing 100% of your transactions, auditing your vendors and employees in near real time. And it's overlooking millions and millions of funds, and helping you guys again keep up with everything you're required to keep up with. So $3,500 annually, or if you wanted to just try it out on a 1-year trial basis, $4,300. You could do it on a 1 year and you get the same amount of access. So that's the pricing. I'll get into next steps in the next few slides. I did want to spend
Taylor,
about 5 minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
we have a question in the chat,
Okay.
and the person, it's Amanda, and she said she loves your presentation and how real time is the product.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have Brandon, since I've been doing so much talking. Brandon, how about you chime in here, bud?
That's totally fine.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's I would say the nice part, because we are completely integrated, all your employees and vendors get updated as soon as you update them in your system. We can update, I should say, we can mass update all of your information in the background at any point in time if you ask us. But as soon as you load in your check runs, all that information is given to you right away. So, say you load in, you have a check run today at noon, and you load it into Bonefish and you want to send those checks out the door at 4 p.m. Any single thing that we'll find, I mean, you'll have to you by like 12:15. We'll give you as many notifications as possible. And of course, we always are looking for stuff as well. So we will sometimes notify you too if we find something. But yeah, human error is definitely a big thing, and you'll be able to see everything right away as soon as that check run gets loaded.
Does that answer your question, hopefully?
Amanda, is that good?
Other questions from the group?
Yes. She said thank you.
So,
Okay. So the next slide is specifically an add-on product for existing customers, or anyone that wants to come on new. Setup super simple. We can get your account up and running really quickly, which I'll get into here at the tail end here. But this new product is called Bonefish Pay. So I'll quickly run through this. It's an add-on product that does come at an additional fee, as it is a separate product, but it's available only to those that currently subscribe to our continuous monitoring solution. So do want to quickly highlight some payables data in the market today. So this is basically a slide showing that it takes a lot of time to prepare checks, and it does come with a high cost, right? And of course, some fraud risks. So checks alone are very expensive to write. $7.78 is the industry average to write a check, factoring in hard costs, check stock, your printer, postage, envelopes, not to mention bank fees, positive pay. And then there's the cost to clear checks from the bank, and then of course the expense of all the ongoing, again, time spent to create those checks. So your costs may be more or less, of course, but even just thinking about how much a stamp is, I mean, that's 60 cents right there. So just the time and the human resources that are put into it. So paying your vendors via check happens pretty often, right, in the educational space, but with that comes a lot of fraud risks, such as your checks being intercepted at the post office by, a bad actor or a criminal. There was actually $3 trillion that was unveiled in the financial crimes for 2023 from NASDAQ's recent report on global fraud, which depicts a concerning scenario. It actually had $500 billion lost to fraud and over $3 trillion in illicit funds circling in the economy. So the most notable from that report actually highlighted a pretty major concern about check fraud in the United States specifically, that the United States is actually responsible for more than 80% of global check fraud losses. So it's a huge, huge risk. And then we've also found too that 72% of suppliers actually prefer electronic payments anyway. They're much faster to be received, right? And they do come with the ability as well through this solution to receive some rebates, which we'll discuss on the next several slides here. So through this solution called Bonefish Pay, we're actually proposing a solution that allows Bonefish systems to facilitate your vendor payments business to business. So all your B2B payments that you want to toggle it on for, you can customize of who you're paying through this solution, or if you prefer how you're currently paying some of your vendors, you can keep it that way. That's the nice thing about it. But it'll take place after your review process within the complete accounts payable monitoring solution that we just discussed. So our payment solution is going to cover 100% of your domestic supplier payments across all payment types, virtual card, enhanced ACH, as well as check. How the vendor is paid is obsolete to you and your staff. Our support staff proactively reaches out and determines that. You would see it as an ACH one-to-one debit on your side, and you could begin reconciling the very next day as a big advantage. So what we're going to do is help decrease your costs by charging a per transaction fee far less than what you're paying today to write checks. So for just $2 per transaction is what we'd be charging, and all vendors would be reached out to a network via our network of suppliers. So if your vendor is not listed as a network supplier, they'll be contacted by our team, making them more willing to accept electronic payments. Of course, if you have mom and pop type shops that want to be paid old-fashioned check, you could continue to pay them how you do today. You don't have to put them through this solution. You could just uncheck their name and just continue to pay them how you are today. Fifth Third Bank is the engine behind this solution, but it is a bank agnostic solution, so you don't have to bank with Fifth Third or any bank in particular for this to work for you guys. But they are the engine behind this solution, and the delivery point of it is through Bonefish systems. So the big advantage is you're already integrated with Bonefish systems if you're an existing monitoring customer of ours. And this slide here illustrates that Bonefish Pay and the payment is discussing the payment flow process, excuse me. So the goal here is that it's so easy for you guys. You guys are already integrated, and then at a click of a button, the payments go out, and again, it's obsolete for you to determine how the vendor prefers to be paid. Our service team handles that for you guys. So some more benefits is, again, we'll identify how they prefer to be paid. You won't have to reach out to each vendor any longer. We will have increased security as the payments are being cut from our in processing account over here. So it would be our information or the bank's Fifth Third's bank information. And so we would take on that liability for you guys. So talking about checks being intercepted, right? It would be another way to help circumvent that. Reduce the cost and time is the big thing here, and then ease the payables department turnover with how busy we hear you guys always are. So there's a lot of work to be done, and alleviating the time it takes to prepare and follow up, handle with exceptions, etc. We take that all on at just, again, $2 per transaction. So we do have a proprietary network of 800,000 plus suppliers and growing. On average, 30% of vendors are already enrolled into our network day one of the program. And then all other vendors will be reached out, making them more and more likely to accept virtual card, which comes with some added benefits. So for any of our current customers that would like to go through a payment analysis breakdown of what some rebates could look like for you, we can take you through an exercise like this. We can actually pull your last 12 months of transactions from the Complete Accounts Payable Monitoring solution. In this example, just for illustration of what this would look like for you guys, it would show, for example, the previous 12 months included 1,228 payments with a total payment amount of $6.5 million. We would be taking the current state, which it costs to cut a check, $7.78, and be just charging you that $2. So no more lost check handling, no more vendor questions, or at least significantly reduced, right? And then handling payment exceptions, printing, mailing prep, worrying about fraud, the list goes on and on. We take on all of that for you for just $2 per transaction. So we could give you a breakdown that would look similar to this. We would show you what your current costs would look like today, taking your total number of payments from the last 12 months, multiplying it by a $4 per check cost to be very conservative, give you your current costs for a rough estimate of $4,900 versus the total cost of using Bonefish Pay. We would take a look at your total number of payments, the 1228, multiply it by our $2 transaction fee, which is essentially, for simple math, right, 50% of the top line here. And then we would subtract your potential rebate based on the projected virtual card spend of what we see in our network today. So in this example, they have $308,000 for a potential school rebate of $709. So the Bonefish Pay cost minus the potential rebate gives you a total Bonefish Pay cost of $1,747 and a potential savings of $3,165, which essentially, eliminates what you guys are paying towards the monitoring solution today, right? So something we can do an analysis for. What it would look like here is when you get into your review page within your specific payment check run, you would see exactly what you see today, but you would actually have a Bonefish Pay column or row here added in, and you'd be able to, we would have them pre-selected for you, and you could toggle on or off if you wanted them to be a part of the solution or not. And then once you go back, go through your normal continuous monitoring review, you just come back to this screen here, set the file as complete, and authorize the payment with your comments in there. And once you click that button, you'll get a pop-up window on the same page. It would show you that you selected 3 of your B2B vendors to be paid via Bonefish Pay. So $2 times 3 gives you a Bonefish Systems fee of just $6. And again, you hit authorize button, your job is done. It takes you back to the home page, and the vendor payment file review is complete, and Bonefish Pay checks are authorized and transmitted for payment. So we can take you guys, our existing customers, through a process that looks like that, that's very specific to your data, so you could get a clear idea. But wanted to end with that too, to let you know that's a new enhancement and we're pretty excited about. And there's a lot of buzz going on with it as well. We were at OASBO last week and had a lot of great conversations, and we've been doing multiple presentations to our 330 plus customers throughout Ohio with Bonefish Pay. So if you want to jump on board with a demo on that, let us know. And then just wrapping up here is our slide about how you can protect yourself and your organization. As Auditor of State Keith Faber, his mission, he's come out and said, is a more efficient, effective, and transparent state government. One of his main goals is increasing public records compliance audits and transparency. And this program will help you easily hit on all those things. So if you want to get up and running, HCCA and Rhonda, her team, they're great. They've helped many of our customers get up and running in just a few short business days. So following this call, we'll get you guys our contact information, and HCCA will get you guys up and running quickly like they always do for all Ohio districts. So fast ongoing support. We're an Ohio-based company, benchmark program partners of OASBO, and we've been around for more than a decade, closer to 15 years. And we'd love to meet and talk to as many of you as possible following this call if you want to continue the chat, and we'd love to answer your questions. So that's all I had. I know there's a lot of information, but my name is Taylor Adrian, Regional Manager of Sales at Bonefish, and here's my contact information. If you want to follow up at any point, I'd love to hear from any of you guys, current customers, or anyone that's looking to become a customer as well. So thank you so much. I know I went a little bit over, but I'm happy to stay on, and if you guys have any questions, and if not, no worries. But thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Taylor, and thank you so much, Brandon, for doing your presentation today. And the information for your contact, it's on your slide right now. It's also on your website, your email, and your phone number is included in the handout, which we attached to the meeting invitation. And we'll also put the recording, we'll have this recording, and we'll be sharing that on our website here.
Okay.
Just a second. On HCC's website, we'll be sharing that, and you'll just go to the Finance State Software Redesign, scroll down to our recordings right here, and then we'll be putting it right under this specific topic right there. So if there's any other information you want to review, that you can replay that. We'll put a link on there to our YouTube recording site, and then also in the handout, there's your contact information as well. And would like to thank everybody for joining us today, and we hope you've received some valuable information. Definitely the audit, as far as audit compliance, and then even on the payroll side with the BCI and the FBI checks that you could have, that I thought that was very valuable as well. So thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any other questions, please contact me or Taylor or Brandon, and have a wonderful day.